Come on in. Come on in, folks. Come on in. Let's have the show that we deserve. The show that we deserve. Let's have. Oh no. Oh no. I forgot my drink. Let me get my drink, folks. Just 1 second. How will we do the simultaneous sip? There is my simultaneous sip. Whoa, almost forgot. Good, now we're ready. Now we're ready. Are we ready to have the show that we deserve? Let's go. There you go. Done. Done. Ready. Come on in, folks. Come on in. If you can hear me, say something. And then we will begin. The show that we deserve. The show that makes everything worth it. Informs us, inspires us, gets us up in the morning. Right? So let me know if you can hear me. Till then, I'll pour my sip. Okay. Beautiful. Should we begin, folks? Can you hear me? Good morning, Nishant. Audible, says Mr. Sumanth Kumar. Good morning, Mr. Kumar. Let's begin. The show that we deserve. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We're having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We're working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our siblings, our husbands, our wives, our friends, everybody. Well, not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Call it divine intervention, folks, but things just got a whole lot better. Now we have Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis that don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. So let's continue with our journey of reading between the lines, things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Let's go! Oh, but before we go, we got to follow a tradition, right? You know the tradition. You know the sweet and sacred tradition of the simultaneous sip. We'll all sip something together, and it'll bring us good luck, as it always does, without fail, every day. And all you need for the simultaneous sip is a cup or mug, a glass, a tank, a chalice, a stein, A canteen jug, a flask, or a vessel of any kind. Pour it with your favorite liquid. I like some hot water with black pepper in it. And here we go. Oh my god. Oh my god. Beautiful. Let's do it again. Sublime. You know what the simultaneous sip says, right? You know what it says? It says that you are not alone. It says that we're in this together, which is such a beautiful thing to say. With that out of the way, let's begin. So, India and New Zealand signed a deal, right? The FTA, the fastest ever, essentially. 9 months, this deal got completed. A lot of props to Mr. Peeyush Goyal and everybody in the government. They are very happy with the deal. Everything is pretty sorted. New Zealand is going to be investing about $20 billion over the course of 15 years. Nobody has seen the next 15 years, of course, but at least that's the commitment. We're going to have a very good duty free tariff line to New Zealand. Some of their products are going to be in India with much ease, right? So, a lot of action. New Zealand is not a very big economy, it's a very small country, small economy. But still, it's not. No deal is a small deal, right? $20 billion over 15 years. That is about $1.1 billion per year. That's about 9,500 crores considering current exchange rates. That is good amount of capex, which is going to help, of course, a lot of collaboration on new technology for the farm sector. The farm sector will be exposed to better agri tech, right? Because in New Zealand they say there are more sheep than people, right? It's a small country, so agreement will help double the trade between the countries to $5 billion in 5 years. $5 billion in 5 years. That's the goal, and zero duty on textiles and clothing across 1,057 tariff lines. So that's what's happening. Tariff removal at peak 5%, boost access for fresh produce, and so on and so forth. Uh, Pretty good deal. Pretty good deal. It's a lot of news around this deal because this is consequential. A lot of things are not for the substance of it, but for the signal, of course, as we've discussed. Not every deal is for the substance of it. It says something, right? The Indian British deal said something. It was a signal to the European play. Similarly, the New Zealand deal is a signal to the rest of the world. The Qatar deal and everything. These look small, but they are consequential in the larger scheme of things because they provide a signal, a direction of where the country is going as far as making deals with other countries is considered. So that's what's happening. 5,000 professional visas valid up to 3 years, right? Uh, that's what's going to happen. Let's move on. A lot of news is around that, but we'll not go into much depth because then it comes to the uh, product by product, industry by industry, segment by segment kind of an analysis. That takes a lot of time, and that's not also very, valuable because directionally you must know. Otherwise, the nitty gritties can be complicated. Also, how these things translate into action is also something that is to be seen with time, right? Even if you make a deal, right, there is some time window for that deal to actually come into practice, right? So that's what's happening with New Zealand and India. The biggest thing is $20 billion over the course of 15 years, right? That's what's happening. Let's move on, folks. Uh, a lot of action when it comes to some private equity from deal action, right? Adani Group is merging ACC Orient into Ambuja. Adani Group had acquired ACC, the cement company, right? It's gonna consolidate its cement assets under a single entity, Ambuja Cements, by independently listing subsidiaries, right? So, merging independently listed subsidiaries. So that's what's happening. Some consolidation. This is just corporate juggle. This happens, right? If you notice, a lot of other companies are also doing something like this. We'll come to that. This just keeps happening when it comes to uh, corporate realignment, right? So to speak. Uh, this is one of those deals. Speaking of corporate realignment, folks, there is an international deal which is in focus, which is the Netflix Warner Brothers Paramount love triangle, right? Netflix has given Warner Brothers a takeover deal, as you know, right? A very, very big deal, $82 billion deal, not getting some of the assets. Paramount had come and countered it, $30 a share, right? They were looking at taking all the assets of Warner Brothers. Uh, these people, Warner Brothers, were not keen on Paramount because they didn't have a breakup fee and the financing wasn't clear. However, Mr. Larry Ellison has stepped in and he's giving some sort of guarantees, right? Pledges $40 billion to salvage Paramount deal. Personal guarantee seeks to reassure Warner Brothers board. Now that is happening. That is another step by Paramount. Paramount is owned by Mr. Larry Ellison's son, Mr. David Ellison. They do not want to let go of Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers and Netflix deal, and whatever happens, if it's Brothers and Paramount deal, it's gonna be, uh, you know, cataclysmic for the world of films and entertainment. It's a very, very, very big and consequential deal. So they are still at it. People say that this is gonna be allaying a lot of fears for the people. However, it might not be sufficient to carry on with the deal. Uh, that said, the stock market has responded favorably. Oracle as well as Warner Brothers went up by 3 to 4% after this announcement. So let's see what happens in that direction, right? Move on, folks. Realty institutional investments, right? If you look at InvITs and REITs, RIET, मिस्टर नरेंद्र सिंह सेज सर हिंदी में बात कर सकते हैं. नरेंद्र जी, मैं तो हिंदी में ही बात करता हूँ जनरली, लेकिन ये शो हमने इंग्लिश में डिज़ाइन किया था. सॉरी अबाउट दैट. ये हम थोड़ा कुछ हमारे साउथ इंडियन यू नो जो व्यूअर्स हैं उनके लिए थोड़ा हिंदी मुश्किल हो जाता है, और वैसे भी ये थोड़ा सा बिजनेस और इंटरनेशनल बिजनेस एंड फाइनेंस पे शो है, तो हम हिंदी में बात नहीं कर पाते. आई एम सो सॉरी. करनी चाहिए बिल्कुल, लेकिन आई एम सॉरी अबाउट दिस नरेंद्र जी. ये इंग्लिश में ही है शो. सॉरी. Mr. Abhishek Sharma asks, quick question, why aren't Amazon, Hotstar, other players interested in the deal? Sorry, Narendra, but so Amazon, Hotstar is Star. Star is Disney. So Hotstar, essentially, Mr. Abhishek Sharma, is basically the Star Group, the Rupert Murdoch Group. They spun off their Star Entertainment deal and they merged with Disney. So that Rupert Murdoch deal already happened. So Rupert Murdoch, sir, is the founder of Fox News, Star Media, all of those assets. So their assets have already been spun into Disney. So they can't get into that deal. Secondly, Amazon. Why is Amazon not interested in Warner Brothers is a question to be answered. Also, Apple and so on and so forth. Apple was looking at Disney at one point. However, all of those people evaluated this, but this is a very, very big deal, right? It's $82 billion, $100 billion considering all assets and so on and so forth. So it's not for everybody. Even after merging of the Star Group with Disney, it'd be quite a big deal for those guys, right? Not everybody has the muscle. Netflix is doing well stock market wise. I mean, their valuation is beefed up, right? Oracle is Oracle. So those two people are left in the fray. Otherwise, it's going to be complicated. So if you look at the whole ecosystem, there used to be Star, there used to be Disney, there used to be all of these guys. The Warner Brothers are also, a lot of companies have gotten merged and demerged and so on and so forth. So it is a very different industry. There's not a lot of players left anymore in this category, right? To be able to take on a deal of that size. But yeah, why is Amazon not interested? I heard they evaluated and then they let it go. That was what it was. Let's move on, folks. Oh, so we were saying that the deal has been favorably taken on by, both the companies' investors, apparently. Moving on. So, yeah, we were talking about the real estate investments. Real estate institutional investments have hit $10.4 billion in FY25. India's real estate is signaling record momentum. Institutional investors 10.4 billion, surpassing the previous peak of $8.4 billion. So real estate is getting a lot of money thanks to the whole RIET and reorganization that has increased the investor appetite in the industry, and this is basically continuing to get a lot of money. So even foreign institutional investments are not as tepid when it comes to real estate as an industry as they are when it comes to the equities of the current Indian scene. So a lot of action happening in this area, right? We'll come to the numbers in some time. Move on, folks. There's a Britannia interview. Need a startup approach to regain ground. Yeah, yeah. Everybody knows. Moving on, folks. Core sector output growth at 1.8%. That's okay. A lot of good news coming in from the macros when it comes to Indian economy. 7.3% growth has been reinstated. I mean, the targets have been up from 6.7 to 7.3. Inflation has been revised downwards, 2.6 to 2%, and so on and so forth. Inflation and real GDP growth, both of them looking good. Personal tax rationalization, GST rationalization, private capex, domestic consumption is all up. Now, what we are thinking about is the AI semiconductor mission and so on and so forth, the printed circuit boards. The ECMS scheme is taking over when it comes to PCB manufacturing in the country. PCB manufacturing, or the core manufacturing of the country, is still the component manufacturing is not really it, right? So they are pushing that envelope at the moment. Also, speaking of manufacturing, API costs have come down from China. So if you've heard about API, active pharmaceutical ingredients, we've talked a lot about this. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know. Active pharmaceutical ingredients, about 70%, more than 70% of all APIs of India come from China. APIs are the core material which makes the medicine, right? So amoxicillin and all of the basically paracetamol, the active drug, the active pharmaceutical ingredient, the core component comes from China. We are basically a trade operator when it comes to pharma, right? We don't make the APIs, unfortunately, and that has been the case for a very, very long time. So even if you look at 70% APIs coming from China, the rest of where they are coming from are also indirectly coming from China. So we still have that, but the good news is that the API costs have come down by a lot, by a lot. So APIs, let's say there was a $900 product, it has come down to $250. Now it's coming on to how much of this is going to be translated to the customer. I mean, would drugs become cheaper? Would drugs become cheaper? If drugs become cheaper, right, inflation will further get a sort of a downward slope, right? That's what we are looking at. So, good news in that way for the country. Bad news that we are still totally dependent on China. Now, the question is, why is API price falling in China? It's because Chinese markets have had some sort of an oversupply when it comes to APIs. So that oversupply is basically hitting saturation, and now the prices are falling. This is something similar that is happening with Chinese energy. So if you look at Chinese energy graph, right, they are 10x US, essentially the solar play, and 3x in total. So it's extraordinary, and that is leading to a downward slope when it comes to the prices of energy. There's sort of a deflationary impact of oversupply when it comes to Chinese energy and now Chinese active pharmaceutical ingredients. The beauty of the situation is, this is something I told you about. Didn't I tell you about it? If you remember, do you think this will affect Divis Labs and Laurus Labs? Asks Mr. Sumanth Kumar. Unfortunately, Mr. Kumar, uh, I do not know about Divis Labs and Laurus Labs. You know, I mean, how can I bluff? I do not. Are you talking about the stocks? Should I look at these companies as investments? Would love to know what you mean. Drug prices may not fall as companies will look to have more profit, says Mr. Abhishek Sharma. So the beauty of it is, Mr. Sharma, the drug industry is extremely, extremely regulated, right? So if something like that happens, you might see, the companies essentially falling in line, or at least symbolically. So there might just be some change when it comes to the pricing of these products. But you're right. To what extent, we don't know, right? Divis Labs and Laurov's Labs. Let me just look it up, folks. Divis Labs. Divis Labs. Okay, it's a share price. I'm looking at it. Share price. 1 year, 11%. Not that great. 5 years, 73%. Pretty, uh, you know, lackadaisical. Indian multinational pharmaceutical company, producer of APIs and intermediaries. This is definitely going to affect them negatively, I think, because if Chinese APIs are going down in price, right, and by such a great factor, Indian API companies should face the heat. I mean, these companies have potential to grab some market share in API manufacturing due to China plus one strategy. The long term outlook is always yes, right? Whenever it comes to replacing China. But to be honest, I'll tell you. So I used to work at DRDO back in as an intern for a very short period, but back in 2013-14, right? That is about 11 years ago. So since 11 years ago, we have been talking the same thing, that China supplies all its APIs. If tomorrow India goes in a war, China can stop its API supplies and Indians will stop dying en masse, right? 90% of APIs. At that time, we used to say 90% of Indian APIs are coming from China, 90% of US APIs are coming from China. Our drug development sector is very weak, and so on and so forth. And those conversations are still there. I mean, are still there, right? So from 90, what we are hearing right now is 70, and the rest of the a lot of it is rerouted. So that's what we are talking about since time immemorial, right? So it should be a long term bet, of course, but how long term? Would we be alive till then when Indian API manufacturing takes over China's? That is a very good question, right? Let's move on, folks. Drive growth, deliver. Uh, Viewing your channel for the first time, what do we discuss? Well, it's thinkers frequency. We discuss business, finance, economics, a little bit of geopolitics, but mostly money related things, right? Moving on, folks. So, uh, yeah, we are good. Asian Q's foreign fund spur a Santa rally on Dalal Street. So a lot of small caps and mid cap segment. Generally, this December 22 to January 3 4, that is the Santa rally time. The stock market essentially goes up, especially in the small and mid segment, right? And that particular bit is happening right now. So Santa rally essentially looks pretty good. IT stocks surge. Strong support for Nifty seen at 25,700. Analysts advise a buy on dip strategy. I don't know why they advised a buy on dip strategy. Is buy on dip strategy ever a bad? I mean, it's as generic as it does, but buy on dips is not always a good strategy, especially when the market is trending down or flowing down. But right now, market looks good, and that's why the Santa rally is happening, right? Rupee has slipped after 3 day rally on dollar demand. Rupee had sort of reclaimed a bit of its losses, right, from 90.2 to 89.67 and so on. It's now at 89.65. That's where rupees fall has caused a lot of problems to people. Yet the inflation hasn't gotten hit to that extent because the crude is down, right? So even if the rupee is falling, the macro indicators are aligning themselves in such a way that Indian scenario, inflation wise, is not hurting. So I've watched a lame influencer's reel or something of that sort, and she said, "Rupee गिरेगा तो compoundedly बढ़ेगी ना आपकी inflation and so on and so forth, right? से इंडिया क्या कर रहा है, रुपी गिरे जा रहा है and so on and so forth, right?" And I was like, "What are you talking about, ma'am?" Because the reason why they have not aggressively tamed the the rupee fall is because uh, it hasn't affected inflation to that degree, right? 2.6% to they're basically downward revision of inflation is happening, which is exactly what's very strange. Usually she would be right, because India is an import dependent economy, right? And any fall in the price of rupee will lead to more drain on the exchequer. If it leads to more drain on the exchequer, consumers should, in theory, lead to higher prices, deal with higher prices. But that hasn't happened yet, because the crude and a lot of micro factors have aligned in such a way that the inflation is still very, very benign. Benign. Gold and silver have hit new highs as geopolitical tensions rise. Geopolitical tensions, as you know, Russia, Ukraine, Thailand, Cambodia, US, Venezuela, China, Japan, what else? Israel, Hamas, and so on and so forth, right? A lot of action happening. Gold and silver prices are up. Exactly what I told you. Exactly what we've been discussing for about 6 months now, over 6 months now. We've been talking as it's a hedge against geopolitical tensions, and that's exactly what's happening. Speaking of geopolitical tensions, folks, a lot of things are happening when it comes to India, Bangladesh, right? Uh, and nobody knows where it goes, right? It's basically a very, very sad situation. Madam Sheikh Hasina has been given a death sentence. Bangladesh is a total shithole, and it's on fire. Every day we are hearing bad stories, then it's getting bad to worse, right? However, Japan essentially is warming up nuclear energy again. This is after Fukushima's disaster, which happened, I guess, uh, over a decade ago, right? That was the worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl, and Japan is warming up to opening its nuclear powers. The world's largest nuclear power plant, will be back in Japan, and they say the safety and security of people is of paramount importance. But we are getting back again. This is in stark contrast to whatever that's happening in Germany. They've been closing all their nuclear plants like idiots, right? But the rest of the world is taking it up, right? So after solar, nuclear is looking like the next frontier, especially in India. You know about the Shanti bill that aims to involve private and industry in nuclear energy. So it's not just India, China, India, US. They're all going heavy on nuclear. Mr. Elon Musk think nuclear is not such a good idea. Solar is a better idea. A lot of people disagree with him because a lot of factors there. But that is what's going on. Very interesting play. Gold and silver hit. So let me check how much did gold rise. GLD price. Whoa! Holy shit! 2.5%. Just the last day, in 5 days, 2.7%. My God. Let me also check SLV. 2.5% this. Oh God. Amazing. Amazing. Absolutely incredible. So that's what's happening, folks. Let's move on. GDP projection 7.3%, inflation lowered to 2%. We've talked about that. Uh, Provision in new insurance bill sparks fears of board shakeups. So the new insurance bill, has basically stirred up a conversation in the independent director space, right? So they've basically changed a clause after gold and silver, chances of other metals following same. Oh yes, Mr. Sharma. A lot of things are happening when it comes to copper as well, right? A lot of things are happening when it comes to copper. I'm not sure about other metals. I'm not I haven't tracked metals very carefully, but yeah, copper is definitely rising as well. Right, it's not showing, it's not a weak bet. But when it comes to gold and silver, especially let's say when it comes to gold, everything is different from gold. So gold should be looked at from a different perspective than, let's say, silver or copper or any other metal, because those metals fall under the utilitarian bracket, right? Because they are industrially relevant brackets. Sorry, metals. They get used as far as actual products is considered. Gold has a different way of working. It's basically a store of value, not a utilitarian product. So let's not confuse those conversations, otherwise it becomes very complicated. Speaking of what we were saying, new insurance bill has stoked some fears in the insurance industry independent director space, because the clause has said that there'll be a conflict of interest situation if the independent director is also serving in another unit, right? So the wording of a clause could result in disqualification of many directors, because it bars directors or officer of an insurer from simultaneously serving as a director or officer of another insurer in the same business line, a bank or an investment firm. So that's gonna lead to some issues compliance wise, right? So independent directors are gonna be looking at clarification on this particular wording. This is a usual play. This is what happens every day. These people come out with new clauses, and then the wording of those clauses are scrutinized, and that's how we grow as a country. Moving on, folks. Dollar deposits up. Gross FDI slips to $6.5 billion. Net flows negative. So that is a slightly disconcerting news when it comes to FDI situation of the country. Decreased marginally from 6.6 billion in September to 6.5 billion in October. However, net FDI remained negative during this period to an outflow of $1.5 billion, and that sort of decreased to $2.3 billion from $2.3 billion in September, right? That's what's happening. But you don't have to look at the numbers on a month-to-month basis, because that sort of gives you an incorrect idea of the situation, right? When it comes to these numbers, you've got to have, let's say, slightly macro zoomed out view. 6 months, 1 year, that's the nice, uh, you know, window of tracking. Mr. Ankur Pandit says, to be honest, we don't realize the extent of our dependence on China. Oh, we do. We talk about it all the time. But this country might, and even we are talking about it. But as Mr. Piyush Goyal says, Indian industry is very slow to adapt to those things, because it tries to take the best bet wherever it's available. It is not a very principled fraternity. That's what Mr. Piyush Goyal has been saying about India incorporates. That if somebody offers you a $1 discount, you'll go there, and you'll not basically check the long-term implications of that. Try selling to Koreans, give them a $10 discount. Try selling to Japanese, they won't. They'll buy from their trusted vendors, right? There's a sense of camaraderie in those fraternities, because they know that if they go for the lowest price play, and they always try to fish the best bet from a short term perspective, soon enough those people will drive everybody out of business, right? Your peers, they're gonna drive your neighbors out of business, and then when there is monopoly, they'll charge you an arm and leg, and you won't be able to do anything about it. That's I'm paraphrasing what Mr. Piyush Goyal said a few days ago, and he's absolutely right. So despite everybody acknowledging the problem with Chinese, our reliance on Chinese products, we're still not being able to move as fast away from them, because of the nature, the inherent culture of Indian incorporates, and that's a very very big problem, and that has been the problem for a very very long time, right? And it's not changing also, unfortunately. This is what we do. We get a better bet. We'll go to a player in China. We'll screw our buddy here in India, because that's profitable. Let's move on, folks. Moving on. Cemented by steel, infrastructure clocks 1.8% growth in November. Cement records highest increase. Steel grows 6.1%. Infrastructure growth is pretty. According to Aditi Nair, the chief economist at ICRA, sequential improvement in YOY growth between October was led by a majority of sectors, with particularly sharp pickup in cement, which is a good news. Let me look at the cement stocks, folks. What are they doing? JK Cement share. Year to date 18%, 5 years 183%. Not doing very well actually. But yeah, they've done well from a macro perspective. Let's move on, folks. A sweetened general insurer privatization gets a reboot. Government to start selection process next FY expects more player to show interest and get better valuation. This is related to the 100% allowance of FDI in the insurance sector, right? That's what the government is looking for. Identifying candidate for privatization. Only listed New India Insurance profitable amongst four state-run insurance. So they're trying to sweeten the deal to get foreign investors interested in taking over Indian insurers, right? However, the nature of the insurance companies, uh, it's slightly, let's say, off-putting. Government hold 85% stake in the insurer. Based on current market cap, it's 21,000 crores, right? Oriental National United Insurance are at losses, in losses. Let's move on, folks. Niti Aayog calls for foreign universities setting up campus within campus. Well, that's a long drawn plan. We have been listening to this about for a decade now, that India wants all of these people, the foreign universities, to essentially set up their campuses in India. That has happened to an extent, but not really to the degree we wanted, right? Mr. Ankur Pandit writes, that's very true, Nishant. I remember working with Sony Japan on a project. Everything they used, laptops, phones, shirts, shoes, was Japanese. We can learn a thing or two from their nationalistic spirit, says Mr. Ankur Pandit. Now, Mr. Pandit, whenever we talk about this, if and when we talk about this, like that, the nationalistic spirit and so on and so forth, we should buy, make in India, buy from India, be vocal for local, all of those things have been in there. A certain set of intelligentsia comes out opposing that play, as if we've done a crime, right? It's basically such a weird situation that if you talk about buying from your peers, right? It's a problem because that essentially is against their free market thesis, right? What they don't understand is a free market is that a free market only stands or only stands on the back of some strength of the domestic enterprise. If there was free market, right, Chinese steel would have killed the rest of the world because China makes more steel than the rest of the world combined. So does the cement play, so does EVs, the batteries, the solar, everything. They make the entire world steel production can stop and they can just keep buying from China. Does it mean we should buy from China? Does it mean protectionism is a bad idea and so on and so forth? It's not, right? Everything is to be looked at from a very holistic perspective. Somehow Indian intelligentsia has been very against the idea of this particular play, and that sort of seeped into our culture, and it always hurts. And you're so right. Even I have a very small experience of working with Japanese, and it's very clear. I mean, and they're doing it not out of cost reasons but predictability, reliability, and so on and so forth. People say that India is a low trust society, and in dealing with Indians there's a harder uh, you know it's a tougher battle to deal with Indians because they can sort of loot you, and other people don't. So maybe it's a cultural issue, but whatever it is, it's really keeping us behind, right? And I can say that by experience actually. Whenever I've tried, most of my business experience has been, dealing with Indian companies, right? And I've been very lucky to also have worked with a few foreign companies as their vendor. Indian companies don't pay on time. They don't pay. Sometimes they don't pay. They just, don't pay at all. They just hold the money, they loot you, they renegotiate after the project is delivered, they block your payments, they harass you for payments. Sometimes you have to threaten them legally to actually get your payments back, and so on and so forth. And that becomes very, very traumatic, extremely traumatic. On the other hand, when you're dealing with, let's say, a British company or a US company or even a Ukrainian company or any company, right? Anybody outside India, it's just very, very nice. Uh, they are very easy. They just pay on time without any problems. You don't have to follow up for money. So that way also we are pretty shitty in that regard, right? And that basically screws everything up. I mean, how can you deal with that? So a lot of problems. Maybe Indians don't deal with Indians because they know, you know, भाई ज़्यादा पैसे दे देता हूँ यार, इस भिखारी से काम नहीं करवाना, और या फिर इससे इसके लिए काम नहीं करना, right? So on and so forth. Moving on, folks. And that, I think, is that Peter Drucker statement, right? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. True. Recently, there were also uproar about payment issues for whereabouts startup. Oh, there's a lot of payment issues, man. There's like payment issues galore. Bira. They haven't paid vendors. They haven't paid employees, right? Employees, it's okay. It's your problem. Vendors are not your issue, yaar. Matlab that they don't have anything to do with the health of your company. They are providing you a service as third party operators. If you don't pay vendors, the trust of the entire business community on you goes down, right? But Indians do that a lot. They feel very happy to, sort of block people's payment and not pay them at all. A lot of times I've taken people to courts and gotten 3x money, uh, because they just didn't pay at all. Anyway, moving on, folks. Data center certification push to be tailored to make AI ready. Data center certification. Apparently, data centers also take a lot of water. Did you know that, folks? Did you know that? I mean, I just got to know. So if you look at it, uh, these facilities require 5 times higher power and 10 times more water, according to industry estimates. The floor should support 20 times more weight per unit area than of other data centers. So, a lot of water. So, we were discussing the second order effects when it comes to data center investments in the country. Perhaps the water purifier guys will also be amongst the people, right? The purifier guys. So we talked about air purifier, the water purifier, the real estate, the copper guys, the power guys, the energy storage, the EPC guys, the solar play, the renewable energy guys. But apparently, water is also a very, very big core component when it comes to creation of these data centers. Let's move on, folks. Tata Electronics will test assemble chips with Japan's ROHM TEPL to start assembling and testing ROHM's India designed automotive grade C MOSFETs. So, of course, whenever a big fab like that is set up, you need to diversify your client base, and that's exactly what's happening. Just a few days ago, we discussed how Tata was also looking at other players, right? And this is a step in that direction. Companies say they will explore co-development of high-value packaging technologies in the future. Through our semiconductor assembly and test facilities, Tata will deliver chip packaging services to support ROHM in creating products tailored for Indian and global markets. Let's move on, folks. Uh, India's bare PCB manufacturing set for a 45% CAGR. This is something that we were discussing few minutes ago, right? Domestic production is on track to expand from $0.6 billion in 24 to $3.8 billion in 2029. That is the bare PCB manufacturing play. This is in consideration if you talk about the final product, the electronics manufacturing, the core final product, that's growing at like 15 to 20% CAGR. This one is growing at 45% CAGR. Why? Because there's a smaller base, right? We don't do a lot of PCBs, right? Bare PCBs manufacturing. The core component stuff manufacturing is still very, very nascent when it comes to India. Final products, we are still doing a lot, right? Especially the smartphone play. So this is growing by leaps and bounds. So if you look at it, India's domestic manufacturing of PCBs is poised to expand at a compound annual growth rate of 545 through FY29, right? Currently is worth $5 billion dollars with an 88% import dependence. So we have bare PCB 88% import dependence, mostly from China. So we talked about APIs, the pharma industry. Now we're talking about electronics, 88%. I was speaking to a senior ex-Vol colleague at e-clerks. He was full of pride when he mentioned they don't pick up work, digital transformation projects with Indian firms anymore. Too much of back and forth for too little money and incessant payment delays. Yeah, unfortunately, that is true. That is true. I talked to Sanjeev sir, right? Sanjeev Bikhchandani sir. And one of the statements he made was कि मेरे को वो काम ही नहीं करना जिसमें मेरे को पैसे बाद में लेने हो, right? So I started Naukri, and the thing was, we got payments through checks, and our product, worked after that. So payment has to come first. Positive cash flow. If payment के पीछे अगर भागना पड़ गया, so that is just very, very difficult, right? And he was so right. He was so right. Most of and whoever works in the service industry, my hats off to those guys, because it's just so incredibly hard to get payments. It's not hard to do work, right? काम तो आप कर रहे हो. You're delivering projects with the best quality. You have a good name. Everything is great. Everybody loves it. The biggest work for an Indian business, especially in the service industry and even the product industry, is to get the money out of the guy, right? They don't pay, man. They don't pay. So people told me that it's their KRA, right? So companies have different uh, departments. The marketing department, let's say you're dealing with the marketing department of the company, they want the work done. So they are very proactive, right? They're very proactive. They are very interested in doing everything. So they'll quickly give you projects. But the payments get cleared from the finance department. Finance department's KRA is to keep money in the bank, right? To improve the cash flow situation. So it's their incentive to delay the payment so that their cash flows essentially stay intact, right? The working capital and so on and so forth. So you're dealing with conflicted interests when trying to get your payments. And I'm like, that's no answer. But that is apparently. I work in service industry, but even it's hard even as employees. 12-hour work days all year round. But at least after your 12-hour work days, you can be assured of a salary. They don't eat your salary or hoard it, right? As businesses. So when I was running the testament, right, my monthly burn rate at the company was about 6 lakh rupees, right? All the salaries and so on and so forth. And I used to be in severe stress, in such stress. I started losing hair because 6 lakh rupees, I was totally bootstrapped, and people weren't paying. So the bank balance was always, right, 6 lakhs, and right now I have like 3 lakh rupees, 4 lakh rupees in bank account. The dates are coming, and I have like 20 lakhs in account receivables, but that money is never appearing, right? And it's so demoralizing. And after that, you pay the salary, and at one point I was looking at the company account. It was just $800 despite 30 lakhs in account receivables. So 30 lakh rupees was stuck in the market, and there was no money, right? So even if you made a lot of money, you never saw that money in the bank because it always came late. And by the time it came, all the expenditures had piled up, and the money came and it went, right? So negative cash flow is a horrible, horrible place to be, right? It was just, and that's a very normal situation when it comes to India. Assholes. Let's move on, folks. India's large rising electronics trade deficit, estimated to be $54 billion, is forcing a deeper push into components. The device level electronics demand grows 10 to 11%, components expanded closer to 20%. It's such hard to do business, man. Respect for the hustle. Yeah, I mean, it was just next level. It is next level still, but that was a horrible period, right? The most depressing part is that you've done the job and now you actually have to beg for your money. You literally have to, and you're calling every day, right? That guy, and he's like, "Abhi ho jayegi, abhi ho jayegi, abhi ho jayegi," and you're like, "Sir, abhi kar dijiye, please kar dijiye, please." And then he stops taking your call, right? And then he replies 2 days later, 3 days later, and you have all these conversations. Then you're talking to six people in one company to get your payment cleared. You're talking to the finance guy, you're talking to the accounts guy, you're talking to the marketing guy, you're talking to the procurement guy, you're writing mails to the CMO, you're writing, everything is happening just to get your 10, 12 lakh, 20 lakh payment, right? And it's not happening, and it's stuck. And you are paying your employees, you're not drawing any salary, because your salary can happen later. It's just that guy is not paying your fair share. I mean, the stuff that you did like 3 months ago. So this is all unnecessary trouble, right? This is just unnecessary, but it happens, unfortunately. Moving on. Nvidia's H200's chip shipments to China by February. HCL Software buying a small agentic AI firm Wobby for $5.3 million, not a big deal. Paytm sets up two overseas units, sells 49% stake in UAE on. That's okay. Let's move on, folks. I hope I'm not missing out on anything. No, I'm not. Apple has been fined by $115 million in Italy over app tracking policy. 2026, they've written a lot of useless articles which wasted my time. But anyway, Sarkar AI, we talked about how India was trying to warm up to the AI play, right? So India has done, of course, they're doing some. Speaking of India and Amazon, so we discussed about how Adani Group was basically merging its units, right? So is Amazon. Amazon Marketplace and Logistics arm is basically merging. So their expenditures and some corporate efficiencies and basically accounting efficiencies could happen. Move to help company simplify structure. This was the example I was missing earlier when I was talking about Adani. I'm glad I could tell you. Real estate hot. I've talked about this. Domestic investors had a commanding 52% share. Right? We've talked about this. Let's move on, folks. Crypto founder, the SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried, who's in jail, is apparently giving legal advice to other people in jail. Right? That is the news. Do you know about Sam Bankman-Fried, folks? So he was a guy who founded FTX, right? And it was just a plain Ponzi kind of an operation. They were basically drawing customer money and investing in from their money management arm, Alameda, and they basically drained everybody's money. And later they found out that these people were all living in a very big mansion in Cayman, and they were all having sex with each other, right? And they were painting themselves as visionaries. In fact, this guy pitched to Sequoia while playing League of Nations, right? And that was the cult of personality. And all the PR articles I remember of that time, that this guy is a boy genius, aw shucks, boy wonder, right? And all of that was an absolute fraud, right? And now he's in jail giving legal advice to other criminals. Moving on, folks. Indian Hotels unveils a Taj in Cairo, Egypt. Indian Hotels, Taj. Moving on, folks. Yeah, so Indian semiconductor mission is of course going on, right? 10,000 crores allocated for the next 5 years, 2024 to 2029. 38,000 GPUs deployed at 65 rupees per hour of usage. 12 startups selected to build foundational models, right? A lot of data labs and so on and so forth. But what's lacking? The adoption. There's no steps on adoption when it comes to Indian AI. And that is a very, very big problem when it comes to adoption. Perplexity has such a nice tie-up with Airtel, right? Reliance and everybody else, ChatGPT, and all of those people's. Google has its own distribution. Indian AI companies don't have any distribution, any way to reach people, and that is a very big issue. Even our conglomerates like Jio are tying up with Facebook, right, and distributing their products instead of supporting Indian AI. All of this is us missing another bus, right? This is us missing another bus, and unfortunately, there is no solution to this, right? Until there is some mandated principles of adoption for the Indian government, from the Indian government coming to the populace, let's say from the government departments, Indian AI will be where it is, right? And with that, we come to the end of 197th episode, folks, of Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis that don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. I hope you had fun. I hope you liked the episode, right? Learned a lot. I definitely learned a lot. And it was a lot of fun, right? It's 9:19. We should punch in anytime. I wish you a beautiful day personally and professionally. And I'll see you tomorrow, same place, same time, hopefully. Yeah. I should thank Mr. Sumanth Kumar. Thank you for being such a nice patron. Mr. Narendra Singh, Mr. Abhishek Sharma, Mr. Tushar Tiwari, Mr. Peeyush Sethi, Mr. Ankur Pandit, and everybody else who joined. I hope you had fun, guys. See you tomorrow. Please take care. Bye-bye.